The painting appeared on Tamsin Cole's Instagram on a Wednesday morning in November, tagged with 3 pale pink hearts and the words, "My new art piece found by my favorite person." 1,700 followers saw it. Lavinia Wyndham was not one of them. But a colleague was, and the colleague had screenshotted it and sent it to Lavinia at 8:47 a.m. with a single message. "Is this your mum's piece? From the hallway?" It was a large watercolor, golden late afternoon light across red PI cliffs, a white farmhouse in the low distance, green fields that seemed to breathe. Rosemary Wyndham had painted it in 1994 and had never sold it. It had been appraised at $340,000. It had hung in the entrance hallway of Lavinia and Nicholas's Rosedale home for the entirety of their marriage. And the woman showing it off to her followers had called it "my new art piece." She did not know whose name was signed in the lower left corner. She did not know what that name meant to every person who had attended a Wyndham Christmas, a Wyndham dinner, or a Wyndham funeral. She did not know what she had just set in motion. Lavinia looked at the screenshot for exactly 30 seconds. Then she set down her coffee, found the original post herself, and looked at it again. The painting was hanging above a cream sofa she did not recognize in a room with exposed brick and pendant lights. The small brass nameplate she'd had made in 2008 from a metalsmith on Ossington Avenue was just barely visible in the lower right corner of the image. R. Wyndham, Cliffs at Cavendish, 1994. She put the phone face down on her desk. She picked up a pencil and looked at the site plan, spread across her drafting table. She did not move for 10 seconds. Then, she picked up the phone again and sent one text to her lawyer. "Struan, pull everything. Joint accounts, the Ashbourne Wyndham Fund, anything Nicholas has registered. In the past 3 years I need it by 4 o'clock, and I need you to be quiet about it." His reply came in under a minute. "I'll start now. How bad?" "I don't know yet," she wrote. "That's why I'm calling you first." She put the phone in her drawer and went back to work. "Before we go any further, drop the name of your city in the comments below. I want to see where this story finds you tonight, and if you're new to Ivory Secrets, subscribe now and stay until the very end, because what Lavinia Wyndham does next is something none of us are going to forget." Lavinia was 47 years old. She had built Wyndham Landscape Studio from a single community garden commission in 2003 into one of the most respected landscape architecture firms in Canada. She had designed public parks in Toronto, the Green Roof Terrace on the National Gallery extension in Ottawa, and a memorial garden in Halifax that had been featured in Canadian Architect 2 years running. She had raised 2 daughters largely alone, while Nicholas traveled the country, making deals and with her connections, and she had done it with the particular composure of a woman who had long since learned to manage more than one crisis without letting either one show. Nicholas Ashbourne was 52, silver-haired, easy in rooms full of people. He had the particular confidence of a man who had spent 22 years walking through doors that his wife had built, and had long since stopped noticing the architecture. He ran Ashbourne Properties, which Lavinia had co-founded with him in 2006, using capital from her mother's estate and relationships from her father's legal career, and which had grown into a mid-sized development firm with a respectable portfolio and a board that trusted Nicholas. Because they had never had reason to look deeper. The distance had been growing for about 18 months. The guest bedroom had become his room. The reasons shifted: early flights, a back problem, the blackout blinds in the guest suite. She had noticed all of it because Lavinia Wyndham noticed everything. She had simply not yet moved because she was Rosemary's daughter, and Rosemary Wyndham's daughters did not make scenes before they had the full picture. By 4:15 that afternoon, she had it. Strawn MacPhail had been her lawyer for 16 years. He was methodical, precise, the kind of man who presents a diagnosis without editorializing. When he sat across from her in the studio boardroom and spread printed documents across the table, his expression was the expression of someone who had not wanted to find what he'd found. "The short version," Lavinia said. Over approximately 3 years, Nicholas has moved $7.2 million from the Ashbourne Wyndham Development Fund into a numbered company, 1847329, Ontario Inc., registered in his name alone through 2 holding layers, but traceable. He paused. The fund operates under a partnership agreement requiring dual consent for any transfer over $50,000. He violated that clause 23 times. She looked at the documents the way she looked at blueprints, not quickly, but with the full weight of her attention, until she understood the whole structure. He was building an exit fund, Struan said, positioning himself so that when he eventually filed for divorce, you'd be working from a significantly smaller number than you're entitled to. Can we freeze the account? Yes, we'd file an injunction through the Ontario Superior Court of Justice. We have grounds. There may also be a secondary matter, certain investor disclosures to Ashbourne Properties shareholders that didn't accurately reflect the fund's liquidity. The OSC may want a conversation. When can you file? Monday morning. Monday, the Heritage Foundation Gala was Saturday. Monday morning, she confirmed. She stood and shook his hand. He gathered his papers. At the door, he turned. For what it's worth, your mother would not be surprised by a single thing you're about to do. She didn't respond to that, but after he left, she sat alone in the boardroom for 3 minutes, with her hands flat on the table, and she let herself feel exactly what she could afford to feel. Then she picked up the phone and called Cornelia Hawthorne. Cornelia Hawthorne was 71 years old, had been married twice, and sat on the boards of 4 of Toronto's oldest cultural institutions. She had known Lavinia since she was 6 weeks old. She was the single most connected woman in the city, and she had been waiting for this phone call with the particular patience of someone who already knew it was coming. I know, she said, before Lavinia could speak. Elise Tran sent me the Instagram post this morning. Half of Yorkville has seen it, and every one of them knows whose painting that is. I assumed. And I need your help Saturday. A pause. Cornelia made a sound that was either a laugh or something very close to it. The Heritage Gala. Yes. Nicholas has already confirmed his table. He requested his usual spot near the north windows. A pause. I assume he plans to bring her. I'm counting on it. Silence. Then, with the particular satisfaction of a woman who had spent 7 decades understanding exactly how these things work. Tell me everything. Lavinia told her. She told her about Struan's afternoon of document reading, which had revealed $7.2 million moved across 23 separate violations, and the possible OSC matter and what it all meant when you looked at the shape of the plan as a whole. She told her about the Heritage Gala, 4 days away, the most photographed social event on Toronto's November calendar. She told her what she wanted. When she finished, Cornelia was quiet. You want to do it at the gala, she said, not a question. I want to do it in front of everyone who has ever shaken Nicholas Ashbourne's hand at a charity dinner and thought they understood who he was. All right, darling, what do you need? I need the right people to know I'll be attending alone. I need them to be watching when I arrive. And I need Tamsin Cole seated somewhere visible, close to the stage, and comfortable enough that she doesn't think twice about it. Cornelia was quiet for a moment. And the painting? Lavinia had already thought about this. If she's wearing the jewelry at the party in the story she didn't know was stolen, she might do the same with the painting. Set the table. Let the room see it clearly when the moment comes. And then? And then I'll explain exactly whose painting it is, and everything else. A long pause. Lavinia, everything else is a different level of betrayal entirely. Yes. Then we're not just protecting your reputation on Saturday. We're ending it. Quietly, surgically, in front of the people who matter. Yes. I'll call Natalie at the Heritage Foundation first thing tomorrow morning. She owes me 2 favors, and I intend to collect both at once. She called Mathilde Renard that evening. Mathilde was 63, a dressmaker from Montréal, who had made every significant piece in Lavinia's wardrobe for the past 2 decades. She flew into Toronto on Thursday morning with 2 garment bags and the energy of a woman who understood immediately that she was being asked to participate in something historical. She spread fabric swatches across the dining table without ceremony. "Tell me one thing," she said. "What do you want her to feel when she sees you?" Lavinia considered it. "Irrelevant," she said. "I want her to feel irrelevant." Mathilde nodded slowly. She picked up a swatch of deep forest green. Not dramatic, not theatrical, but the particular green of something that has existed for a very long time and requires no announcement. "This," she said, "clean lines, nothing that tries, something that simply is." Yes. The throat visible, a collar, wide, architectural, brushed gold, not jewelry, more like a mark. She held a strip of gold-toned fabric against Lavinia's collarbone and tilted her head, something that looks made rather than chosen. Lavinia looked at the 2 fabrics together. Something settled in her chest. Yes, exactly that. Mathilde smiled, not a happy smile, but the smile of a craftsperson who has been given the exact right brief. 3 days. You have 4. Then it will be perfect. By Thursday evening, Struan had the complete picture. He came in person, which told her what she needed to know before he spoke. He laid everything across the dining table with the care of a man delivering a structural assessment of a building that should not be standing. 23 transfers, he said, full recovery, plus interest, plus damages for breach of fiduciary duty. And depending on how aggressively we pursue the investor disclosure issue, the OSC may open a file regardless of what we decide. The shape of what he did is visible to anyone who looks. She absorbed this Monday morning. Yes, the papers will be ready. At the door he turned. "Lavinia, are you all right?" She looked at him, and for a moment, just a moment, something moved across her face that was not strategy. Something tired. Something that had been holding the weight of a 22-year marriage in one hand and the knowledge of what it had actually been in the other, and had not yet put either one down. "I loved him," she said. It was the simplest thing she'd said in 4 days. "I'm not confused about that. I know I did." Strawn said nothing. "But loving someone," she continued, "does not obligate you to let them take everything from you, and I intend to take everything back. Every single thing." He nodded once, put on his coat and left. She sat alone in the quiet apartment for a little while, hands folded, eyes on nothing in particular, and let herself feel exactly as much as she allowed herself to feel, which was enough. Then she stood up and went back to work. The gown arrived Friday evening. Mathilde brought it herself and hung it on the back of the study door. They stood side by side and looked at it in silence. It was exactly what Lavinia had imagined, and somehow more. The green was so deep it seemed to absorb the room's light, rather than reflect it. The collar lay in a separate case, wide, flat, brushed gold, asymmetrical in a way that looked entirely deliberate, like something forged rather than designed. "It doesn't demand anything," Mathilde said quietly. "It simply occupies the room." Yes, that's it exactly. That evening, Lavinia sent one text to Cornelia, "Everything is ready." Cornelia's reply came in under a minute. "So is the room. Tamsin Cole is at table 4, front left. Clear sight lines from the stage and the main entrance. His table has been moved to the East Gallery Annex. He'll discover it when he arrives. There will be nothing graceful he can do about it at that point." Lavinia read it twice. Then she put down the phone and turned off the light and went to get some sleep. Because she needed to be rested, and because in 24 hours she was going to walk into the Royal Ontario Museum and take back everything that had ever been hers. Saturday morning arrived quietly, without announcement, the way important mornings always do. Lavinia was awake before 5. She made coffee and stood at the tall windows of the Rosedale house and watched the city in the last dark before the light came. She had 11 hours before the car arrived. She sat at her desk with Struan's documents and read them again, not because she had forgotten anything, but because she believed in knowing things so thoroughly that they became part of the body rather than just the mind. She read about the numbered company. She read about the 23 transfers. She read about the 4 years of patient, methodical movement of money that Nicholas had conducted with the confidence of a man who had decided the person he was stealing from would not look. He had been right about the trust. He had been catastrophically wrong about everything else. Her phone rang at 4:30, unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Then something made her pick up. "Is this Lavinia Wyndham?" The voice was young, female, carefully controlled in the way of someone who is nervous and working very hard not to sound it. Lavinia went still. "Who is this?" A pause. "My name is Tamsin Cole." The silence that followed lasted about 4 seconds and felt considerably longer. "I know you don't want to hear from me," Tamsin said. The nervousness was more audible now. "I'm not calling to apologize exactly. I don't think that's what this is, but I need to ask you something." "Ask it," Lavinia said. Her voice was level. "The painting Nicholas gave me, he told me he found it at an auction, at a gallery in the distillery district, that the artist was a local painter, that the nameplate was from a previous owner." She stopped. Started again. "I Googled the name on the plate this morning, R. Wyndham. Rosemary Wyndham." Lavinia said nothing. "She was your mother," Tamsin said. It was not quite a question. She already knew the answer. "My mother painted it in 1994, Lavinia said. "It was one of the last major works she completed before she was diagnosed. It has been in my family for 30 years. It was not Nicholas's to give to anyone." She heard Tamsin exhale, a long, shaky sound. "He told me." "I know what he told you." Lavinia's voice didn't rise. It stayed exactly where it was. "He told you what was convenient. He told you what would make you feel like you were receiving something beautiful instead of something that was taken." Silence. "What are you going to do?" Tamsin asked. Her voice had gone very small. "I'm going to attend the Heritage Foundation Gala tonight," Lavinia said, "and I'm going to reclaim what is mine. All of it." A pause. "What you do with that information is your decision to make." Another silence, then very flatly. "He doesn't love me, does he?" Lavinia thought about this for a moment. She thought about the 28-year-old on the other end of the line, who had walked into a situation she hadn't fully understood and believed the things a man told her because she had wanted to believe them. "I think," Lavinia said carefully, "that Nicholas loves the version of himself that other people reflect back to him. Everything else is negotiable." Something on the line that was not quite a laugh. "Bring the painting tonight," Lavinia said. A sharp intake of breath. "What?" "Come to the gala. Bring the painting. When the moment arrives, let me handle the rest." "Why would you?" "Because what happens tonight needs to happen in front of the people who need to see it. And because what he did to me, he also did to you, with different tools and a different story, but the same fundamental disregard for the person in front of him." She paused. "You didn't know, I believe you. This is your chance to choose what you do with that." A very long silence. Long enough that Lavinia checked whether the call had dropped. "All right," Tamsin said finally. Lavinia ended the call. She sat for a moment with the phone in her hands. She had not planned that call. She had not planned Tamsin. But she had built a firm from nothing over 20 years, precisely by knowing when to adapt without showing the adaptation. And she understood that sometimes the plan encounters a variable it hadn't accounted for, and the only question is whether you absorb it or get overtaken by it. She had absorbed it. She had turned an unexpected variable into something that served the truth. She stood. She put on the gown. She fastened the collar at her throat. She looked at herself in the mirror, for exactly as long as it took to confirm that what she saw was what she intended. Then she turned away from the mirror, because she didn't need it anymore. The car pulled up to the Royal Ontario Museum at 8:40. Lavinia sat still for 3 seconds. She felt the weight of the collar at her throat, the particular coldness of a November night pressing against the car windows. 3 seconds of absolute quiet with herself and everything she knew and everything she was about to do. Then she opened the door herself. The air hit her, cold, clean, the specific sharpness of Toronto in November that makes everything feel precisely real. She heard cameras before she heard voices, the refocus and click of photographers who had been watching the entrance all evening, and recognized something worth capturing. She walked at the pace Mathilde had prescribed, the pace of a woman who is not hurrying toward anything because everything is already coming to her. Elise Tran from the Globe was positioned near the museum's main entrance, exactly where Cornelia had said she would be. Lavinia found her within the first 5 seconds. Elise was 50, had covered Toronto's cultural landscape for 26 years, and had the particular quality of attention of someone who can distinguish between things that look important and things that actually are. She looked at Lavinia the Wokage. A camera finds its subject, a small sudden sharpening of everything. Their eyes met for half a second. Lavinia gave the smallest possible nod. Elise's pen lifted almost imperceptibly. Everything that needed to be communicated between them was communicated in under 2 seconds. Inside, the Heritage Foundation Gala was at its peak. The museum's main hall transformed, every chandelier lit, every table set, every person in Toronto who mattered gathered under the same domed ceiling. Lavinia moved through the room not quickly, not slowly. She stopped to speak with 3 separate groups of people she'd known for years, and gave each of them her complete attention, the way she always did. Because the most important social skill she had ever developed was making the person in front of her feel fully seen regardless of what else was happening in the room. The room responded to her immediately, the way it always had. People from nearby tables drifted slightly closer, the unconscious gravitational pull of someone who commands a room without demanding it. Cornelia found her in under a minute, midnight blue, as always. It had been her signature at these events. For 30 years, she arrived at Lavinia's elbow without breaking stride. "They're here," she said quietly. "He arrived 20 minutes ago. There was a conversation with Nathalie about the table. He was not graceful about it." "How ungraceful?" "Sufficiently," Cornelia said, with the quiet satisfaction of a woman who had arranged the seating herself. "He's in the East Annex. He can see the main room from there, but he is very much not in it. A beat. She's at table 4, front left, clear sightlines from the stage." A pause. "And, Lavinia," she brought the painting. Lavinia went still. She brought it. It's propped against the wall behind her chair. Everyone at that table has looked at it twice. It's unmistakably Rosemary's. Anyone who knows her work can see it from 30 feet. Lavinia found table 4 from across the room. Tamsin was seated with the slightly rigid posture of someone who has made a significant decision and is in the middle of executing it before the reasoning part of her mind can catch up. She was 28 years old, and she was sitting with the painting propped behind her, like a confession she had decided to make. She found Lavinia's eyes across the distance of the room. Lavinia looked at her steadily for a moment, not unkindly, not warmly, just with the full weight of a woman who knows exactly what is about to happen and has decided to let the other person know it too. Then she looked away. She picked up her water glass. She turned to the woman beside her and asked about her son's first year at McGill, and she meant it entirely, because Lavinia Wyndham had never once been willing to let a situation make her less present to the people around her. Nicholas came to her table at 9:20. She heard his approach before she saw him. His footsteps, slightly off their usual cadence, the way they always were when he was recalibrating faster than his composure could manage. He stopped beside her chair. "Lavinia," low, controlled, "I'd like to speak with you outside." She turned to look at him with the full, unhurried grace of someone for whom turning is the craft rushed. She looked at the tuxedo, the careful hair, the expression on his face that was trying to be neutral and achieving something closer to trapped. "Nicholas," she said pleasantly, "the way you say the name of someone you have known for a very long time and are entirely prepared for, I think we're exactly where we should be." Something moved across his face. "Please." The people at her table had gone very still, in the way of people who understand they are witnessing something important. "After the program," she said, and turned back to her conversation. Nicholas stood at the edge of her table for several more seconds. Then he walked back toward the annex. She heard his footsteps go and counted them to herself, not out of drama, but because she had always found counting calming, the small precision of numbers in a room full of variables. She set down her fork, she picked up her water glass, she waited. The Foundation's Master of Ceremonies finished his remarks at 10:20 and stepped back from the podium. Lavinia rose from her chair without announcement or drama. She moved toward the stage at a pace that she had decided on and made entirely her own. The room's attention followed her, not loudly, not suddenly, but the way a room's attention moves when it recognizes that something real is happening and decides to pay it the respect of full presence. She placed both hands on the edges of the podium, not gripping, grounded. "Many of you know me as Lavinia Ashbourne," she said. Her voice was warm, fully projected, unhurried. "But I was Lavinia Wyndham before I was anything else. Tonight I'd like to speak to you as that person." The room went quiet in the way of a room that has understood it is at the theater. "My mother, Rosemary Wyndham, painted for 40 years. She painted the land, Canadian land, specifically. She believed that landscape holds memory the way people do, and that to paint it faithfully was to record something true about who we are and where we come from." She paused. Her most personal work was a large watercolor she completed in 1994. "It depicts a property on Prince Edward Island that has been in my family for generations. She called it Cliffs at Cavendish. It has been in my possession for 30 years. Not a chair scraped, not a glass was set down. The room had stopped entirely. "I'm telling you this," Lavinia said, "not because I want your sympathy. I am not here for sympathy. I am telling you because this room, these people, you are the community my family has been part of for decades. And I believe you deserve honesty about what the name Wyndham means, about what I have built, about what I intend to protect." She paused. "I am not diminished. I am not finished. I am standing here in my mother's tradition, in this room, and I am nowhere near done." She stepped back from the podium. The applause began at Cornelia's table and moved through the room the way applause does when something true has just been said in a space where the truth is not always the first language spoken. She walked back toward her table. She did not look toward the annex. She heard the footsteps behind her 18 seconds later, measured, controlled, slightly off their usual rhythm, the particular gait of a man holding composure with both hands. Because it is the only thing he has left. He came around to her left side. She saw him in her peripheral vision before she acknowledged him. That half second of taking in the tuxedo, the careful silver hair, the expression of a man who has just felt the ground shift and is trying to calculate in real time which direction he is going to fall. "Lavinia," his voice was flat, stripped of everything except the thin wire of control stretched to its limit. "What have you done?" It was not a question. She turned to look at him. She let him see what she wanted him to see. Not anger, not grief, just the absolute clarity of a woman who has already done every necessary thing and is simply waiting for him to understand it. "I've been honest," she said, "with a community I've been part of for 20 years about my family's history and my family's property." She paused. "Is there something about that you'd like to dispute?" He looked around the room. She watched him do it, watched him read the faces, the postures. Elise Tran, near the north pillar, with her recorder. Cornelia watching with the calm satisfaction of a woman who built this evening, piece by piece over 4 days. Strawn, who had arrived quietly an hour ago and was standing near the east entrance, and the faces of the 40 or 50 people in their immediate vicinity, who had stopped pretending not to listen and were simply openly watching. He looked at her, and in that look she saw something she had not expected, or perhaps had expected, but had not fully prepared herself to feel. The grief of a man who has been very intelligent his entire life, and has now, for the first time, encountered the full cost of having applied that intelligence entirely in the wrong direction. It was not her problem, she knew that, but she felt it briefly because she had loved him, and the part of her that had loved him was still capable of recognizing when he was in pain, even pain that was entirely of his own making. Struan will file Monday morning, she said, keeping her voice at the same pleasant conversational register she had maintained throughout. The injunction covers 84739 Ontario Inc. All of it. And depending on how certain investor disclosures are reviewed by the OSC, there may be a secondary matter that requires a separate conversation. Your lawyer should expect a call at 9 a.m. Something moved through his face in sequence. Shock, then calculation. Then the particular quiet of a man, doing arithmetic that keeps coming up wrong no matter how many times he runs the numbers. You've known, he said, very quietly. How long? 11 days, she said. I wanted to be thorough. He was silent for a long moment. Around them, the room had stopped performing the pretense of not listening. This was the Heritage Foundation Gala, the Royal Ontario Museum. And what was happening at Table 1 was the kind of thing that people in this room would remember and recount for years, and every person present understood it. Then Lavinia looked past Nicholas. Tamsin was walking toward them through the room. She moved with the deliberate forward motion of someone executing a decision before the reasoning part of her mind can catch up and ask her to reconsider. She was carrying the painting, both arms properly, carefully. The way you carry something you understand belongs to someone else. Nicholas saw her when she was 12 feet away. Tamsin, he said, a warning. She didn't look at him. She looked at Lavinia. She stopped 3 feet away. She held the painting out. Cliffs at Cavendish, 1994, and her hands were steady, which Lavinia suspected cost her something real. This belongs to you, Tamsin said. It always did. I'm sorry it took me this long to understand that. The room's silence reached a quality Lavinia had never experienced in 40 years of attending events in this building. Not the silence of people pretending not to watch. The silence of people who have stopped pretending entirely and are simply openly holding their breath. Nicholas said, Tamsin, you told me it came from an auction. She turned to look at him now, and her voice was controlled, but it had the particular tightness of something that has been decided under great personal cost. You told me the nameplate was from a previous collector. You told me a lot of things. A pause. I'm not doing this for you, she said to Lavinia. I want to be honest about that. I'm doing it because I don't want to be the person who keeps something that isn't hers because it was easier not to ask questions. Her voice went slightly unsteady at the edges. The first sign of the effort this was costing her. And because you were right on the phone today, about both of us. Lavinia reached out and took the painting. The weight of it was exactly as she remembered. Heavier than it looked, the way real things always are. She felt the frame in her hands. Her mother's work, her mother's light, 30 years of every hallway walk and every Christmas morning, and every time she had passed it, and felt for a moment less alone. Thank you, she said quietly. Tamsin nodded once. Then she turned and walked back across the room without looking at Nicholas again. Straight-backed, deliberate, the walk of someone who has done a hard thing and is carrying it correctly. Lavinia found herself unexpectedly respecting her. She looked at Nicholas. He was looking at where Tamsin had been. His face was the face of a man watching several structures collapse simultaneously. The affair, the financial plan, the narrative he'd been quietly building, the composure he'd walked into this building wearing, all of it going at once. Nicholas, Lavinia said, I think you should go home tonight. Have your lawyer call Struan on Monday morning. And I think, if you are as intelligent as you have always believed yourself to be, you will understand that what happens next depends entirely on how cooperative you choose to be. She paused. I'm not interested in destroying you beyond what the law requires. I never was. But I am going to take back everything that belongs to me. All of it. He looked at her for a long moment. She watched the calculation happening behind his eyes, the rapid arithmetic of a man trying to determine which move costs him the least in a room full of people who have already chosen a side, and the side they chose is not his. He stood. He straightened his jacket. He looked around the room one final time, reading the faces, and she watched him understand that there was nothing left to manage here. The story had already been told. and it had been told by a woman in a green gown who had stood at a podium and spoken about what she intended to protect, and by a young woman in black who had carried a painting across a ballroom floor and placed it in the right hands. He left without another word. She watched him cross the room, the measured walk held together by effort alone, and she watched him hand his ticket to the coat attendant at the far door, and she watched him step through it. The room exhaled, not literally, but the quality of the air changed, the held breath, tension. Releasing all at once, conversations resuming the collective relief of a gathering that has witnessed something significant and is now allowed to process it. Cornelia was beside her within seconds. Elise photographed the moment, she said quietly. She was perfectly positioned. I know. A pause, then in a different voice. Lavinia, how are you? Lavinia looked down at the painting in her arms. She closed her fingers around the lower edge of the frame. She felt the weight of it, not just the wood and the pigment and the $340,000, but everything that made those things meaningful. Her mother's hand, the red cliffs of a shore she had visited every summer as a child, the particular afternoon light that Rosemary had decided was worth capturing and had captured so faithfully that standing in front of the painting felt, even now, like standing on that shore. I'm all right, she said. And she meant it in the way it mattered most, not the managed version, not the composed version, but the actual kind. The kind that arrives when you have done what needed doing and done it as cleanly as it could be done. Cornelia touched her arm briefly, the way you touch something you love to confirm it's still there. The evening continued. People came to her table, the Heritage Foundation's chair, 2 board members. She had known for 15 years Elise Tran, who said only, I'll be in touch in the morning, and moved away with the efficiency of someone who has everything she needs. Each conversation was brief and warm and exactly what it needed to be. At 11:30 she asked for her coat. The car was waiting. She settled into the back seat with the painting beside her carefully upright. She closed her eyes for 30 seconds and felt the full weight of the past 11 days. What they had cost and what they had restored. Then she opened her eyes and looked out at the city. Bay Street quiet. The CN Tower lit in the far distance. The particular nighttime texture of Toronto, which is never entirely silent, but knows how to hold itself between its own intensities. Her phone lit up twice. The first was Strawn. Papers are ready for Monday. Call me at 8. The second was a number she didn't recognize, a text message that read, You were right, I didn't know. And I should have asked more questions sooner. I'm glad I did the right thing tonight, even if it was late. T. She looked at the message for a moment. She thought about the 28-year-old who had called her that afternoon with a shaky voice and who had walked across a ballroom floor a few hours later and done the harder thing, and who had then disappeared quietly into whatever came next. She hoped, genuinely and without the need to invest in it, that it would be better than what had preceded it. She put the phone in her bag. The car stopped at the house in Rosedale. She stepped out into the cold night air, the painting under her arm, and unlocked the front door, and carried it inside, and set it against the hallway wall precisely where it had always been. She stepped back. She looked at it. Cliffs at Cavendish, her mother's hand, the red cliffs, the green fields, the white farmhouse in the far distance, and the light, that particular golden late afternoon light, across PEI that Rosemary had spent 40 years learning to see clearly and had finally, in 1994, gotten exactly right. Lavinia's phone rang. Her daughter Molly, calling from Vancouver. She answered immediately. Mum. Molly's voice had the careful quality of someone who had been reading the internet since 11 o'clock and was trying to gauge exactly how much to ask. Tell me everything. Are you okay? Like actually okay. Not the kind of okay you say when you don't want me to worry. Lavinia almost laughed. It surprised her, the easiness of it, the way it came up from somewhere that had been held very tightly for 11 days and was now suddenly loose. How much have you read? Everything that's online, which is clearly not everything. Lavinia thought about how to answer honestly. She thought about the gown, and the painting, and Strawn's documents spread across the dining table, and Tamsin's voice on the phone that afternoon, and the weight of the frame in her hands when it was placed there. She thought about the car ride home, and the particular piece of a night after which nothing would be quite the same. "I'm the best kind of okay," she said, "the kind that costs something." A long pause, then Molly said quietly, "I'm coming home next weekend." "You don't have to." "I know I don't have to, I want to." A beat. "Is the painting back?" Lavinia looked at it in the hallway, visible from the kitchen where she was standing. Red cliffs, green fields, her mother's light. "It's back," she said. "Good," said Molly, "then I'm coming home." She stayed on the line a while longer, and they talked the way they sometimes did. Easily, without agenda. The particular warmth of two people who know each other well enough to say nothing important and still mean everything. When they said goodnight, Lavinia stood for a moment with the phone in her hand, feeling the specific fullness of that, her daughter's voice, the ease of it, the trust in it. Then she walked to the hallway and rehung the painting, on its hook in its place, where it had been for 22 years, and where it would be for 22 more. She stood back and looked at it. She thought about what came next, not the injunction, not the OSC matter, not the patient financial work of untangling what Nicholas had spent 4 years quietly building in the dark. All of that was in motion in capable hands, proceeding as it was designed to proceed. She thought about what she actually wanted, past all of it. The answer came to her the way the right answers always do. Not as a decision, but as a recognition, something she had already known and simply hadn't said aloud yet. She was going to re-establish the Wyndham Foundation, the one her mother had endowed with the proceeds of her first major exhibition in 1991, and that had been quietly folded into joint assets during the marriage. She was going to reconstitute it as a standalone entity, fund it properly, and direct it toward what Rosemary had cared about most: arts education in communities where it was chronically underfunded, where the doors were closed before anyone had a chance to decide whether to walk through them. She was going to do it in her mother's name, and she was going to do it in a way that lasted past her. That was the kind of thing that made a name mean something, not the painting beautiful as it was, not the house or the capital or the injunction, the practice of building forward in the direction of what was true. She turned off the hallway light. She went to bed. And in the morning she would begin again, exactly as she had always begun, exactly as she had been built to begin, from exactly the beginning.